All right, so chapter 5 deals with how steep those demand curves are. And the steepness of the demand curve is also, when we mathematically compute it, it's known as the price elasticity. And the price elasticity we can think of in words as the responsiveness of the quantity demanded when price changes, decreases, or increases. Now, we know the law of demand, right? The law of demand states that as the price increases, the quantity demanded decreases. And it also states that as the price decreases, the quantity demanded increases. So what we're trying to figure out with price elasticity is we're trying to figure out how strong this relationship is. And so the way that we do that is through a calculation of the price elasticity of demand, also known commonly as the P.E.D. So it's often abbreviated as P.E.D, price elasticity of demand. And the price elasticity of demand is the ratio between the percentage change in the quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in the price of the good. And so this is a number that when it is, so it has three common values that it takes. It can take the value of 1. It can take the value of less than 1. Oh, important part here. The price elasticity of demand is often with an absolute value around it. So we're just looking, since we know that it's an inverse relationship. How do we know it's an inverse relationship? Because of the law of demand. So since we know it's an inverse relationship, that means we know that this ratio is always going to be negative. So economists and their wisdom and or love of confusing common people take the absolute value of this and discuss it in positive terms, just assuming that you're aware that the law of demand is holding, and these are actually inversely related. So we can take the value less than 1, but above 0, obviously, since it's an absolute value. Can take the value of 1, and they can take the value of greater than 1. If it takes the value of 1, this is perhaps the easiest definition, but it's also one of the most rare. You're not going to see it a lot. So taking the value of 1, that is the unit elastic. And unit elastic means that if I change the price, my total revenue is not going to change. So any kind of increase in the price that I have is going to be matched by an exact and corresponding change in the quantity demanded. So unit elastic means that any kind of increase in my price is going to be matched exactly by the change in quantity. And so unit elastic means that I can't impact my total revenue by changing the price. When something is greater than 1, we say that that is elastic. The other way to think about elastic is to think about it as just very responsive. A very elastic waistline is very responsive to the pressure, or a waistband is very responsive to the stretching and the force that you give it, right? Where something that is not very responsive, we don't use this term when we're talking about clothing or other things like that. It's pretty much specialized to economics. But when something is not very responsive, we say that it is inelastic.
might be a dumb question, but what does the triangle mean again?
Oh, you're good. Triangle means change in. Yeah. We're going to unpack this in a second. We're going to learn how to actually calculate this percentage change in a second here. Yeah. No, that's a great question. So this is our percent sign, right? And that's just change. Yep. So that's like a mathematical. If you haven't taken a lot of math classes, or depending on who your math professor was, you probably haven't seen it. So yeah, thank you. Good question. So a percentage change in the price, so if we increase price by 10%, that means that we would have a decrease in the quantity demanded by 10% when it's unit elastic. Now, when it's elastic, that means that I have a situation where my change in my price is going to be greater than my change in my quantity. So my change in my price is going to be greater than my change in my quantity when it's elastic. Oh, sorry. I got thrown off. I was like, that sounds completely wrong. And it is. It's backwards. So elastic is when we have a change in the price that is less than the change in the equilibrium quantity. So the change in the equilibrium quantity is always going to be greater than the change in the equilibrium price in elastic. So if I have an elastic situation, maybe I increase the price by 10%, but then that results in a decrease in the quantity demanded by 20%. And so as a result of doing this price change, my total revenue is going to decrease overall. So yes, my price has increased, but if my quantity demanded decreases by more than that price increase, then we're going to end up with a decrease in the total revenue and an elastic situation. Now, when we have an inelastic, now that's the thing that I erroneously put before. So this is the situation where we have a percentage change in the price that is greater than the percentage change in the quantity demanded. And so inelastic we'll often think about as, so the one that we think about a lot is the market of insulin. Right? Insulin, inelastic, they both start with in. And insulin is inelastic. They can increase the price of insulin by, something like 100%, right? And the corresponding change in the quantity demanded is going to be pretty darn close to zero, because these are people that need insulin in order to live, right? If you're diabetic, you don't really have any other option. So this is going to be an increase in price, and maybe there's a decrease. Maybe some people will cut back on the amount of insulin they're using, but it's going to be something like, 2% in the quantity demanded after an increase in 100% for the price. So these are our responsiveness measures. Inelastic is not very responsive. So things like life-saving medicines are inelastic. Elastic is very responsive. Things like luxury vacations, eating out, dessert. Those kind of things are elastic, right? If the price of an eclair doubles, you're probably not likely to buy it. If the price of, your heating doubles, what are you going to do? It's a necessity. So certain things have different priorities within our consumption bundle, and therefore they have different responsivenesses to price changes.